It's Wednesday, November 12th, 2025, and it looks like any peace deal may be off. This is coming from the Ukrainian side saying, you know what, we've tried, it's not working. Before I show you what they actually said, so they said this first: peace talks with Russia were suspended until the end of the year due to a lack of progress. Deputy Foreign Minister Kislystia confirmed. Okay, before I talk about more of that story, let me tell you what the Russians were saying today. So they were saying these gems. Sergei Lavrov said the demand should not be merely for a cessation of hostilities, merely to continue arming Ukraine. A temporary truce would not resolve anything. The Ukraine conflict must be ended based on principles for a sustainable settlement, which by that he means I'm going to stall until we decide that we're ready to not stall, because they have to have these things sorted before they can actually stop things. So they're not serious. And then here's Anton Gerashenko showing you what Peskov said. Putin said that a question was put to him. Putin said that in his view, Europe is preparing for war with Russia. Do we see it that way too? And are we preparing in turn? Peskov says our views coincide with his. Indeed, well, it should. I mean, you're the press officer for Putin, right? There are very strong pro-militarist sentiments in European countries. They are forcing through further increases in their defense budgets. Some countries, such as Poland, already have raised theirs to almost 5%. What he didn't tell you was that Russia's at north of 7%. So who's the militaristic kind of country? Okay, such an atmosphere really does exist, and it's bad. But we have always understood that this danger was possible, which is why we took all the necessary measures in advance to protect our interests and security. It's always this weird mirroring effect of blaming the other side for what you do. So they're not serious. Here's another not serious. Russia will not take Kherson. This is coming from the pro-Russian governor of the occupation authorities in Kherson. Russia will not take Kherson. Kherson is Russia. We are simply bringing Kherson residents back to their family by destroying people, by sending FPV drones to kill little old ladies. So, yeah. Okay, now let's talk about what the undersecretary was saying. Ukraine's peace negotiator on what was said in the rooms with the Russians. Okay, Russian negotiators in Istanbul ignored attempts to discuss concrete steps toward peace, denied Ukraine had a separate identity, and offered to set up WhatsApp groups to give the illusion of progress, one of Kyiv's top diplomats has said. Sergei Kislystia, I'm slaughtered at. Greg, I was just on the phone with Greg Terry, and he was just telling me how to pronounce it, and I still slaughtered it, who has been asked by President Zelensky to oversee the peace process involving Russia. The U.S. and its NATO allies spoke of his approach to working with the Trump administration and how he hoped economic pressure on Russia would help to end the war. And it is. The economic pressure is the part that's working here. When he took office in February 2025 as Ukraine's deputy foreign minister, he became the diplomatic right hand to Zelensky's powerful chief of staff, Andriy Yermak, accompanying him as they crisscrossed the globe. He is also responsible for lobbying for international sanctions. At negotiations in Istanbul, now here's why they're saying that the Russians aren't serious. So, okay, it's suspended. Peace negotiations are off the table. At negotiations in Istanbul that took place in May 16th, June 2nd, and July 23rd, the Russians came with a dossier on each member of the Ukrainian delegation. What are they doing that for? They know very well the background of every one of us, and sometimes they do say provocative things and quite nasty, designed to distract and anger Ukrainian delegates so that they could be blamed for the talks being derailed. So they could blame the Ukrainians for derailing it because they get offended. President Putin chose as his lead negotiator Vladimir Medinsky, a historian who opened talks with a lecture giving a distorted account of the history of Ukraine and Russia, concluding that we, the Russians, are killing Russians. Okay, I read you the little bit from his history textbook the other day. Remember him? But we knew that they would do it. And I remember in a pre-meeting briefing, we agreed among ourselves that we would let them talk as long as they like. We would not engage in discussions of the authenticity of the historical accounts. Then we would go straight to our agenda. The Russians repeatedly ignored all other attempts to talk about substance. They offered to set up WhatsApp groups, working groups, and other processes that they could use to trick the Americans into believing that the talks were making progress so that they would not take punitive action. You have to put your arguments on the desk too, and then the other side also puts their arguments on the desk. The only ceasefire the Russian delegation would agree to was a 2-hour truce to collect the dead. Energy is an important area of focus. Russia's shadow fleet, they are already sanctioned by the US, UK, EU, but our aging tankers are still navigate the world's waterways without insurance, posing an environmental risk while funding Putin's war chest. Goes on and says that October meeting between Trump and Zelensky was a result of months of works behind the scenes. Before Trump could be persuaded to take sanctions action, Kyiv had to prove to the Americans that the Russians were deceiving them. And apparently they had some success in that. According to Castilia Lista, who has been open in the past about what he saw as a propensity for Trump administration officials to repeat Kremlin talking points, and they have. In the spring, Trump's chosen negotiator, Steve Witkoff, appeared to accept Putin's arguments. We were saying that Putin's exclusive intention was to buy time, that he was genuinely not up to having a real deal or real conversation with the U.S. administration. That seems like what they were trying to do. Witkoff was really buying at face value what the Russians were telling him, just taking it all in. With this year's peace talks ending with little progress made, they have now been abandoned. So that's why they're saying, okay, we're not doing the peace talk thing. We're done for the year. Okay. While he was open to progress toward peace, Castilia Lista does not seem surprised that talks with the Russian delegation yielded limited results. It's important to understand that in a dictatorship, you can't have creative discussions with negotiation teams representing the dictator. They come with a very rigid mandate, and they have to defend whatever positions that they were given. On top of that, you have people controlling each other, and then they report on each other. So how tough were they in presenting their position? Okay. Now, so the conclusion was this. So in the Russian system, you have to deal directly with the dictator, and that's why it's being suspended. Okay, so I hope that helps make sense of what they were doing and why they were doing it. Okay, now, even as this war is going on, yesterday was it yesterday or the day before? I think it was yesterday. I was talking about the chief judicial officer and one of Zelensky's friends was being checked out by NABU for some kind of crimes. Even as war continues to devastate Ukraine, a $100 million corruption scandal has erupted, implicating top officials and a close associate of President Zelensky. The revelations are shaking both Kyiv's leadership and Western confidence. So, what actually happened here was that the NABU just released 1,000 plus hours of surveillance showing that the president's friend, Mindich, allegedly demanding 10 to 15% kickbacks on nuclear plant production contracts. So that's just full-out corruption, right? This is from Euromaidan Press, by the way. Now, Euromaidan Press was saying that is why he, being Zelensky, tried to shut down the Anti-Corruption Bureau. I don't know that that's the case. This is commentary, but okay. Mindich fled hours before the searches. Now comes the hardest test. Will Ukraine actually hold the powerful accountable? Zelensky has called for Justice Minister and Energy Minister to resign. Mindich remains at large. Western partners are watching. Anti-corruption failures. That's right. This could be far worse, not just what's going on in the case, but if it shakes Western confidence that you're actually not proceeding forward with anti-corruption failures, that could be problematic. Whether Ukraine passes democracy's ultimate test now depends on what happens in courtrooms, not just on the streets. Now, to his credit, Zelensky actually came out and said, look, the process of justice needs to continue, came out in that statement yesterday. So we'll see how that all works. Oleksiy Goncharenko is a member of the a Ukrainian member of parliament, and he's also in the opposition party. I say that because he's saying this, still in shock from the news from Ukraine. Zelensky's close friend, Timur Mindich, allegedly stole money from protective structures for energy. This is being done in the midst of a war when we're fighting for our survival. He's right. It's all bad. If this guy did it, which it looks like he has, it's all bad. But again, Goncharenko is actually in an opposition party to Zelensky. So you just got to understand the framing here. It's kind of like Trump talking about Biden or Biden talking about Trump. It's that sort of thing. But he's not wrong. Everything that he said is absolutely right, that this is bad. You're fighting for survival. Okay. Let's talk about what's going on in the United States. Breaking news: House Democrats released emails in which Jeffrey Epstein alleged that Donald Trump knew of the convicted sex offender's conduct and spent many hours at my house with the victim. Again, it's speculation whether that means that he actually did anything or not, but things seem to be surfacing. Here's the actual article from the New York Times. I don't have the New York Times directly. I use the university databases because, I'm nerdy like that. Okay. In a message obtained by Congress, the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein wrote that Donald J. Trump spent hours at his house with one of Epstein's victims. House Democrats on Wednesday released emails in which Jeffrey Epstein wrote that the President Trump had spent many hours at my house with one of Epstein's victims, among other messages that suggested that convicted sex offender believed Mr. Trump knew more about his abuse than he has acknowledged. The fact remains, President Trump kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his club decades ago for being a creep to his female employees, including the person that they're talking about, Miss Guffrey, Miss Levitt said. So that's his press spokesperson saying that. In one email from April 2011, Mr. Epstein told Miss Maxwell, Giselle Maxwell, who was later convicted on charges related to facilitating his crimes, quote, "I want you to realize that dog hasn't barked, that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump," unquote. He added that an unnamed victim spent many hours at his house with him, and he never had once been mentioned. Okay. In a 2016 deposition for a civil case, Ms. Guffrey was asked if she believed that Mr. Trump had witnessed the sexual abuse of minors in Mr. Epstein's home. Quote, "I don't think Donald Trump participated in anything," unquote, she said. So he's saying that he hasn't. Both Mr. Trump and Mr. Epstein, they were friends in the 1990s and early 2000s. Their relationship appeared to fizzle out around 2004, though Mr. Trump and those close to him have offered different accounts of why. By one account, they fell out after trying to outbid each other on a piece of Palm Beach real estate. Who knows what the actual reason was? Mr. Wolf maintains that Mr. Epstein and warned him that CNN was, quote, planning, he's warning Epstein that CNN was, quote, planning to ask Trump tonight about his relationship with you. Now, this is in December 15th of 2015. Trump's running for office. He's, quote, planning to ask Trump about his relationship with you, either on air or in scrum afterwards, unquote. Mr. Epstein wrote back, quote, "If we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be?" unquote. That's the weirdest part of this, as far as I'm concerned, because if you actually don't have anything to hide, you just say, okay, well, tell him the truth. You don't say, oh, I want to craft an answer for him. So that's just strange. Speaker Mike Johnson was scheduled to swear in Representative Alidia, I don't know how to pronounce her name, a Democrat from Arizona he's avoided seating for nearly 2 months since she won her election. She is expected to provide the final signature necessary on a petition to force a House vote on a measure demanding that Trump administration release all of its investigative material pertaining to Epstein. The White House has strongly opposed that measure. Okay, so that's where we are right now, and I don't know what's going to happen moving forward, but I'm not going to say without evidence that he's innocent or that he's guilty. We'll see how this unfolds. I'm sure people have strong opinions, and that's perfectly fine. But here's what's happening now. So U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson says that he expects the government shutdown to end today. Okay, I just wanted to come out and say that we believe this long national nightmare will end. This has been the longest U.S. government shutdown, I believe, in history, but I could be wrong about that. It's at least been within recent decades. Okay, now, Trump, commenting on the accusations of ties with Epstein, says this. He came out and he's hot and bothered by it. The Democrats are trying to bring up the Jeffrey Epstein hoax again because they'll do anything at all to deflect on how badly they've done on the shutdown and so many other subjects. Only very bad or stupid Republican would fall into that trap. Okay. The Democrats cost our country $1.5 trillion with their recent antics of viciously closing our country, while at the same time putting many at risk, and they should pay a fair price. There should be no deflections to Epstein, or anything else. Any Republicans involved should be focused only on opening up our country and fixing the massive damage caused by the Democrats. So, of course, Trump doesn't think that there's anything there. But if there wasn't anything there, you would have to ask yourself, why wouldn't you say, let's release everything and show everything? So But it'll come, it looks like. So, and by the way, this story just gets weirder and weirder. You know who's like one of the most vocal proponents of releasing it? Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene, the MAGA hat woman. Yeah. Okay, so here's how it'll go down. This is from Politico, how the battle over Epstein files will play out. Democrats and the House Oversight Committee released fresh emails where Epstein told a journalist that Trump knew about the girls that Epstein was trafficking. The process of doing so will begin around 4 p.m. when Johnson swears in this new representative right before the House votes to end the government shutdown, ending a 50-day wait following the Arizona Democrats' election. Shortly afterward, this new elected official says that she will affix the 218th and final signature to a discharge petition led by Representatives Thomas Massie. By the way, Thomas Massie is a MAGA Republican, and Ro Khanna, a Democrat from California, to force a vote on the full release of the DOJ Epstein files. So that's how this will actually play out. We'll be watching that. Now, I'm showing you that to say this. Trump's going to be distracted. And if he's not distracted because of this, he'll be distracted for, well, this. Pentagon's largest warship just entered Latin American waters as U.S. tensions with Venezuela arrived. Last week, I showed you how the former NATO commander, he said, look, nothing's going to start until the carrier gets here, the Gerald Ford. The Gerald Ford was in Spain a week ago. I looked at it and I tracked where it was a week ago. Now it's in the Caribbean. So something could very well pop off. War edges closer. Venezuela has announced nationwide military mobilization. Large-scale drills will involve the Army, Navy, Air Force, reserve units, and the Bolivarian militia. According to the defense minister, when I say Bolivarian, we're not talking about Bolivia. We're talking about going to the name Bolivar, Simon Bolivar. According to the defense minister, the order came directly from dictator Nicolas Maduro in response to the growing U.S. military presence in the Caribbean. He said that the goal of the exercises is to strengthen defense coordination and readiness, calling U.S. actions, quote, an imperialist threat to which Caracas must respond. So Venezuela is in this mobilization posture right now. Okay. Yeah, it's just some strange stuff. All right, so that's all that I'm going to talk about right now. Let's end with this by Darth Putin. Darth Putin said, on this day, 1940. Oh, before I do that, my shout out is to Jens Eriksberger, board member, patron subscriber. Thank you very much, Jens. I appreciate your support. On this day, Darth Putin says, in 1940, Soviet foreign minister arrived by train in Berlin, received guard of honor, and had friendly meet with Hitler. If Ukraine was actually Nazi, he would sign a peace deal with them, and we'd actually honor it, unlike every other one we've signed. I mean, that is a brilliant insight, isn't it? Okay, and then finally, on this day in 2021, I denied any plans to invade Ukraine, which was sort of true. The plan was really blank. But you can believe me now if I say I'll stop and sign a treaty, right? Well, if we look at the date, November 12th, 2021, what's in the headline? Russia says it's not planning an invasion as the U.S. and others raise concerns about troop buildup near Ukraine. Oh, no, we're not doing that. All right, last little bit. This is Jake Bro's fundraiser. It was at 100 right now. If I updated it, it's at $1,046,540.40. Good job, Jake Bro. Thank you, my friends, for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person who cares about Ukraine.